Hello, I'm Kathleen Petticord.
And I'm Leif Simon.
Welcome to the next edition of our podcast from Paris. We continue in sequester here in our little apartment in Paris. We've stopped counting the weeks. I couldn't tell you how long we've been here. And we still don't know when we'll be leaving, but maybe Macron is suggesting the middle of May, which means still a few weeks ahead of us. So we continue to look for ways to fill our time. I did a very thorough, deep spring cleaning of our apartment most recent weekend. And Leif went online and bought for me, which I really appreciated, some ivy and lavender plants that I was able to plant in our window boxes.
Right. So, thankfully, the mail service is still working in France. We can order online, although Macron was shutting down Amazon for non-essential stuff because of some issues inside their...
Concerns,
inside their depots.
So I think I got my lavender and ivy just in time.
Well, it didn't come from Amazon, so
okay.
it came from a plant place in France.
Oh, good.
So for me, I use Google Translate, look up what I want to find in English and put it in the translator, then put that into Google in French, and I can find lots of websites that deliver.
Okay. All right, let's dive into our questions. Please keep them coming. We really appreciate all the feedback that we're getting. All right, from Mike B. in the United States. Kathleen and Leif, we are planning a move out of the United States, possibly to Belize. Our retirement will come from pension plans in the U.S. If we receive our checks in Belize, we understand that we still will have to pay U.S. federal taxes. However, there is no domicile state that can collect taxes. So doesn't that amount to a tax break, or am I missing something?
Right, it does if you're coming from a state that taxes pensions. So there are several states in the U.S., as you may already know, that don't tax personal income at all. Texas and Florida and a few others, I forget, there's about 5. And then there are other states that don't actually tax pensions on retirees. And I think that list jumps to about 12. So, right, if you're coming from a state that does tax a pension, once you move overseas and break that chain of residency or domicile, is the word gentleman used, then you wouldn't be paying that state tax anymore. You still pay federal tax, and in Belize it's not an issue because they tax on a jurisdictional basis, so there wouldn't be any tax on the retirement income there. Other countries you might move to might tax a foreign pension. Most don't. So it's a question to ask if you are taxed in the country where you're residing, you'd be able to get a tax credit on the U.S. side, or there could be a double taxation treaty, which basically tells which country gets to tax which type of income.
So if you're coming from a high tax state, this
Right.
is a nice bonus.
Right. And if you're coming from a place like California, but California doesn't give up their hold on you very
They're
easily.
right to tax easily.
So a lot of Californians will make an interim move to a place like Texas or Florida
Oh, that's a good point.
to break that sequence with California cleanly before they leave the U.S.
So California could have no claim.
Right.
Okay. All right. This question comes from Jeff F., also in the United States. Isn't there a Social Security penalty for retiring overseas? Many in my wife's family believe so. They say that you would get only 2/3 or 3/4 of your check if the Social Security Administration knows that you have retired overseas, for example, to Mexico, where I guess they are thinking of going.
Right, and I think part of the key is the family members aren't U.S. citizens, presumably they're green card holders. But no, moving overseas doesn't hinder your right or ability to collect Social Security, especially if you're a U.S. citizen or if you're a U.S. Green card holder. If you're I forget what the exact term is, but if you're not a green card holder but are eligible for Social Security and move overseas, then you might, depending on where you are and what your citizenship is, there might be some restrictions on that. But generally speaking, U.S. citizens moving overseas, there's no restrictions on them collecting Social Security unless you're going to move to Cuba or Iran or North Korea, which I don't think is an issue for most people.
But this is a good topic. We get lots of questions all the time about Social Security. And so the fundamentals are you don't lose it by retiring
Right.
overseas. You aren't penalized for retiring overseas. And you can have it direct deposited to an account in many countries overseas.
Right.
So that answers the question, how do you access it? Well, you can have it delivered to your bank directly in any number of countries.
Right.
Okay, Gary C. from the United States. Kathleen, Thank you for everything. I love reading your dispatches and I'm enjoying the podcasts. Thank you. Kathleen, I know that some income earned overseas can be excluded from my U.S. tax return, but what about an internet business where the income is derived from many different countries? In other words, if we move to Panama to run our business, is the income excluded regardless where it comes from, even if it comes from the United States?
All right, so what Gary is asking about is the foreign earned income exclusion. And so there's two ways to qualify for that: being a bona fide resident of another country, or the days test, which means being in another jurisdiction for 330 days or more. The reverse of that is being outside of the U.S. For at least 330 days, although you have to be in another jurisdiction, not just international waters. And if you qualify, then what matters is where the income was earned. So even if you're a bona fide resident of another country and you're a consultant, and you go work 2 weeks in the U.S. for one of your clients, those 2 weeks that you're in the U.S. won't fall under the foreign earned income exclusion. In other words, it'll be taxable. But if you have an internet business and you have people buying from the U.S., but you're in Panama doing the work, keeping the website up, doing whatever work is necessary for your business, you're doing the work in another country outside of the U.S., and so it does qualify for the foreign earned income exclusion.
Okay, so this can get complicated. One of the fundamentals to understand with this in general, because it's another topic we get so many questions about, is that it has to do with earned income, firstly.
Right.
Passive income, no matter where you are or what description or it's not relevant, it's not...
Exactly, we get the question a lot from people who want to move overseas and be day traders. They say their day trading is work, that's what they do every day. But that's still just investments, so you can't qualify as a day trader for the foreign earned income exclusion.
Okay. Kathleen, if I move overseas, could I ever return to the United States?
Oh, I have a great sarcastic answer for that.
But if you haven't met Leif at a conference yet, you haven't had the privilege and the pleasure of enjoying his no-holds-bar response which he gives in person. He's being a little careful here.
I'll hold my tongue and not get political today, but of course, if you're a U.S. citizen, you have the right to return to the U.S. anytime you want. And we talk about this in the context of getting multiple citizenships and residencies for being allowed to be in a country. Kathleen and I have Irish citizenship, which allows us to be in the EU and live in Ireland, or we could get residency in another EU country if we wanted to, as well as our U.S. citizenship. And so during this coronavirus lockdown, the question was, okay, well, where do we want to be locked down? We have Panama residency. We were trying to get back to Panama before it closed down, but the country closed down. So in the current situation, it's more difficult to get back to where you want to be or where you're allowed to be. But generally speaking, no, if you're a U.S. citizen, have a U.S. passport, you can return to the U.S. anytime.
Okay, we will call it a wrap there for another episode of our podcast from Paris. Please continue to stay safe, stay well, stay comfortable, and keep your imagination going during this period of pause. We'll be in touch again soon. Thank you.